Dear friends, students and learners, I am Shashank Srivastava from School of Engineering and Technology, IGNOU. So today I am going to discuss with you the Unit 2 and Module number 11 under that. And the unit is Engineering Alloys, Ferrous and Non-Ferrous. So today we will discuss about, first of all, hardenability measurement, how it is done. Because we had left out this thing in the earlier session, we had just discussed about hardenability but not discussed about the measurement of hardenability, so we are doing it in this session. So the types of tests are, number one is the cylinder series test and the number two is Jominy quench test. So in the cylinder series test, like the name is there, cylinder, so there are a series of round bars of different diameters. These cylinders are of different diameters and they are first of all austenized. You have read about this austeniting process in the earlier sessions. So these are austenized and then further quenched in either oil or in water. So both these processes, austenizing and quenching, you have learnt about in the previous sessions. So the bars, these bars actually are long enough. And why they are long enough? So that the cooling of the section at the middle is not much affected by the ends. If it is not long enough, then the cooling at the middle portion of the cylinder will be affected by the ends. After hardening, what happens? Each bar is then cut into half and hardness measured at various points along a diameter. Now suppose this is the cross section. Here the figure is given. This is the cross section of the cylindrical bar. So when it is cut, the cross section will look like this. Then there are small points, small circles you can see. So they are meant to signify that that point is there to measure the hardness up to that region. So these points represent that thing. So here are two curves again in which it is understood how the hardness is varying with the depth in the water of the cylinder which is being immersed into it. So water quenching is taking place. So a portion of the cylinder is being dipped inside the water for quenching process. So the graph between the hardness and the distance from the center is given here in these two figures. On the y-axis there is the DPN, meaning the diamond pyramid based hardness measurement, meaning Vickers hardness, similar to that, and on the horizontal axis, x-axis, there is the depth up to which the cylinder has been dipped in water. So from this graph, if you can see the diameter at which 50% of the structure is martensite is determined. So if you see at the bottom around 250 on the hardness scale, you see 125 millimeter cylindrical hardness can be achieved, whereas when you go up to around 350 on the hardness scale, then it is only 75 millimeter, and if you go up to 700 in the hardness scale, then it is around only 25 millimeter. So we can see that martensite is around 700 in the Brinell hardness number. So we around 25 millimeter diameter cylinder can be turned into 50% of martensite. So this is what is signified in this figure. So the first figure is for the plain carbon steel, which I have described to you, and the second one is for the 1% chromium vanadium alloy steel. So you can see in the second figure is there's a difference. See that at 500 diamond pyramid hardness number, you can see that 125 millimeter cylinder diameter hardness can be achieved, whereas in the previous case, in the first figure, it was only at a hardness level of 250. So we can see that the chromium vanadium alloy steel gives better hardness. So this previous graph diameter which we saw just now is plotted against the bar diameter. In that way, it becomes possible to determine the bar diameter in which 50% martensite would form at the center. And when we do this, then this diameter is called the critical diameter for that quenching medium. So we will get the critical diameter at which 50% martensite of that particular body will be formed. Since the rate of cooling is less for an oil quench than for water quench, the critical diameter of any steel will be less for oil quenching than for water quenching? Yes, it is quite obvious, because the rate of cooling in oil is lesser, so lesser martensite will be formed. So when we make a cylinder out of that martensite, its diameter will obviously be lesser. Then the severity of quench is an index which will tell us about the quenching condition, and this index is denoted by capital H and is defined as the given ratio. It is the ratio of heat transfer coefficient between steel and fluid divided by thermal conductivity of steel. So it is the ratio of these two things, heat transfer or coefficient between steel and fluid and thermal conductivity of steel. So when H approaches infinity, this value which we discussed just now, when it approaches infinity, it represents the severest condition of quench, meaning as soon as the surface of steel is in contact with the quenching medium, it immediately will change into the martensite, or it reaches the temperature of the quenching medium immediately. So the critical diameter for such an ideal and unrealizable condition is called the ideal critical diameter. So this will be the ideal critical diameter, because it is immediately changing to the temperature of the quenching medium. And for infinite H value, the critical diameter and the ideal critical diameter will be the same. It is very obvious. Now you see here in this diagram, it will be more clear. On the y-axis there is the critical diameter in millimeter, and on the x-axis there is the ideal critical diameter in millimeter. So you see the straight line which represents infinity. Infinity is there in the graph. So quench severity is given there, and different hardness is being given with different graphs. Like you see at the bottom there is 0.02, and if you go to the top, then there is infinity, and at the infinity H you can see that both critical diameter and the ideal critical diameter are same, meaning the slope is 45 degree. So you see from the graph on that line of H is equal to infinity, then if the ideal critical diameter is matched on the critical diameter axis, then both are same. Like for example, you go with 50, so 50 on the ideal critical diameter will be the same 50 on the critical diameter axis when H is equal to infinity. And when we move down, then the ideal critical diameter will obviously be larger than the critical diameter. So this was about the cylindrical test, and now we move on to the second test, which is the Jominy test for measurement of hardenability. And this is more convenient actually, and there is a standard specimen of a steel, and it is shown in the figure, you can see, and this one is again austenized in normal manner like it was done in the previous case, and the lower end of the specimen is then quenched by a standard jet of water. You can see in the figure there is a jet of water at the bottom, and it results into varying rate of cooling. So the rate of cooling at the jet end is about 300 degrees centigrade per second, while that at the other end, the top end, if you see, it is only about 3 degrees centigrade per second. So this varying cooling rate produces a wide range of hardness along the length of Jominy specimen. So we know that with cooling rate the hardness varies. So if the cooling rate is different at one end and it is different at the other end, so obviously the hardness attained in that specimen will also be different at different portions. A flat portion is ground along the length and hardness measured at various points, and the plot of hardness along the length gives us the Jominy index of hardenability. So you see in this figure, gives us the distance from the quenched end in millimeter on the x-axis, and our hardness is on the y-axis. This is the Rockwell hardness RC, as we have studied earlier. And suppose you draw a horizontal line on the curve from the vertical axis, then that line will correspond to the hardness of the semi-martensite zone. Semi-martensite means that 50% martensite has been formed. That's why its name is semi-martensite. And then from this point where this line meets the Jominy curve, then we draw a vertical line which falls onto the x-axis. From there we will get the distance from the quenched end for this hardness. So there are two curves here, one is A and the other one is B. So the first one, A, is for shallow hardenability and the second one is for deep hardening steel. You can see and understand very well that deep hardening, because you see the hardness number is more in case of the B graph. So from there we got the distance from the quenched end, and now when we plot it against the diameter of the bar, then we can get the diameter of the cylindrical bar, which can be completely hardened with this process. So this is plotted and you can see two graphs here. One is for the water quenching and the other one is for the oil quenching. Now suppose that the distance from the quenched end is about 6 millimeter, as you can see in the graph. Then if you draw a line on the oil one and draw it up to the oil graph, and then further where these two intersect, from that point you draw a horizontal line which falls on the y-axis, so you will get the value of the diameter of the cylinder which can be completely hardened. So from here, if we see, if it is 6 millimeter distance from quenched end in case of oil, then it will meet around 18 millimeter of cylindrical bar. So we can say that a cylindrical bar of 18 millimeter can be completely hardened through this process in case of oil, and for water it will be around 38 millimeter, you can see from the graph. So now we take up the relationship between the hardness of the semi-martensite zone and the carbon content. So that's what I have discussed earlier also, the semi-martensite thing. So from here with different carbon content, you can see the hardness of the semi-martensite, meaning if 50% martensite is formed, what is the hardness? So suppose you have carbon content 0.23 to 0.27. So in case of carbon steel, the hardness number, Rockwell hardness number is 30, whereas in case of alloy steel it is 35. So this is the hardness of the semi-martensite. Similarly, we can see for other carbon contents from this table. So after discussing the measurement of hardenability, how it is done, we move on to the next thing, which is tempering. So why it is done, we will understand now the purpose. Its purpose is to reduce the internal stresses. There are internal stresses when heat treatment is done and other type of mechanical working is done, then also it is there. So we have to remove those things because they are hampering and very detrimental to the microstructure. So these are caused due to different cooling rates of hardening and also because of transformation from austenite to martensite. So like we have taken up this thing earlier, when austenite changes to martensite on quenching, so there is possibility of cracks being developed and also internal stresses coming in. So cooling rate is very important, and due to this internal stresses come, and we can reduce this with the help of the process called tempering. So what happens in this process then? Now we can see. So in this treatment, heating of the hardened component is done between 200 and 600 degrees centigrade. So this is the range. We have to heat the specimen from 200 degree to 600 degrees centigrade, and then we have to hold it at that temperature for a predetermined period of time. So we can see here that there are two main factors. One is the temperature range and the other one is the time, for how long we have to hold it, and accordingly we will get different things depending upon the time we hold it at that temperature. And further, after holding it at that temperature, cooling is done slowly to the room temperature. So this is the process of tempering. Since we know that martensite itself is a metastable phase, structural changes induced by tempering proceed fairly rapidly. So it is not a very stable phase, this martensite, so the changes can take place easily because no equilibrium is there as such. And all structures resulting from tempering are termed as martensite. So now we take up what happens in different temperature ranges, what kind of microstructure we get. So we will study here, like for 100 degree to 220 degrees centigrade. So there is a very little change that occurs in the microstructure in this range. but the heating helps to remove considerable amount of internal stresses. Still, 100 to 220 degrees centigrade is helpful for removing certain internal stresses. So the stress relieving treatment is given when maximum hardness is desirable and brittleness is not a problem. So what we have to do here, that we have to get the hardness and at the same time brittleness has to be avoided. So this process of tempering is very useful there. So in this case, the strain is relieved because of the removal of carbon atoms from their trapped positions. So earlier we have studied that in martensite, the carbon atom tries to occupy the position between the iron atoms, and that's what causes the distortion in that, and we get a body-centered tetragonal structure. We have discussed this thing earlier in the previous sessions. So this carbon atom now can be removed and we can get a better structure which will cause lesser internal stress. So after 100 to 220 degrees centigrade, now we discuss about 240 to 400 degrees centigrade, what happens in this range. So in this range, martensite decomposes rapidly into emulsimide form of perlite known as the secondary troodocyte. So perlite is now formed when we move in this temperature range 240 to 400 degrees centigrade, and it's a rapid process. And this material is very fine in nature. This troodocyte is very fine and hence it provides good shock resistance. So fineness is there, meaning that the nucleation is more and the grain growth is less, and it is helpful in shock resistance. Like we need this thing, shock resistance, in many processes, like in the case of vehicles also shock absorbers are there. So this material can be helpful in that case. Then the fine edge tools are tempered in this range, but more precisely within 270 to 300 degrees centigrade. So another application is there of the fine edge tools. So they are tempered in this range, but sometimes to get more precision, they are done that they are heated up to 270 to 300 degrees centigrade also. Further, now we move on to a higher temperature, 400 to 500 degrees centigrade. So here what happens, that the troodocyte which was formed in the earlier range begins to coalesce, forming a coarse form of globular perlite known as sorbite. So the earlier one was troodocyte, now it is getting coalesced and forming something which is coarser. It is not that fine, meaning the interstitial spaces are more now, and the grain growth is taking place more rapidly instead of nucleation, and this thing is known as the sorbite. It may be recalled that both troodocyte and sorbite are now preferably called the tempered martensite. So like earlier I told you, everything that is being tempered is termed in terms of only martensite, known in terms of only martensite. So here also they are known as the tempered martensite. This treatment is desirable in components like our beams. Beams are there in buildings, then springs, you know, and axles, the vehicle axles you may be knowing. So in those things, this kind of tempered martensite is being used. Further higher we move up in the 600 to 700 degrees centigrade temperature range. So here heating the hardened steel causes spheroidization. So this is a new process, that is spheroidization takes place, and structure is known as spheroidite. This structure is formed because of further coalescence of the carbide within the alloy. So there is carbide within the alloy, and when these coalesce, then we are getting the spheroidite. So these spheroidized steels actually show very good machinability. And why do they show like that? Because there is a mixture of the carbide particles and the ferrite matrix. So ferrite has softness property, whereas carbide shows more hardness. So both the things are there, so they are easily machinable, and they do not have to be cut by the cutting tool. If the spheroidized steel is heated to just above its lower critical temperature, what happens then? The perlite present will alter to austenite, and cooling to room temperature will yield a structure of lamellar perlite plus pro-eutectoid ferrite or cementite, depending upon the carbon content. So in this, to better understand lower critical temperature, we have done before, that is 723 to 38 degrees centigrade, as you know, and when it is heated up to that temperature and further cooled to room temperature, what we get actually, we get either lamellar chloride plus pro-eutectide ferrite, because it can go towards the hypoeutectide zone also and towards the hyper also. Eutectoid we have studied earlier, it is 0.8% carbon. So when it goes towards the hypoeutectide, then it will give ferrite, and when it goes towards the hypereutectoid, then it will give cementite. So either mixture will be of perlite plus ferrite or perlite plus cementite. So a rough estimate for the temperature of tempering by color appearance is also a tradition which is helpful in shop floors, but it is not that accurate and doesn't give us exact temperature measurement, but still just by vision we can get a certain degree of correctness. So from the table you can see for planning tools the tempering temperature is 230 degree and it gives a color of paste straw. Similarly, there are other things also mentioned you can learn from this table, like for cold chisels, tempering temperature is there 280 degrees centigrade and the color is dark purple. So there are others also, and it is a kind of a guess and not exact thing, but it still gives a good prediction. So now we will take up changes in mechanical properties with tempering. So tempering process, we learnt about this, and now what benefits it gives us. So it improves the ductility and toughness of the quenched steel and decreases the hardness. So two things it is giving, ductility and toughness increase and hardness is getting decreased. So from this curve you can see the tempering temperature is on the x-axis, and our different things like the ductility measurement and our impact strength and yield and ultimate tensile strength, these are on the y-axis, but all are given in terms of stress scale only, meaning Newton per millimeter square you can say. So this thing is there, and from here you can see like IZOD is there in the graph. If you see, IZOD is mentioned. So this curve is parallel to the x-axis for some time, and then it moves with a very high slope, higher and higher. If you can see, that means impact strength is increasing in the temperature range of 400 to 1150. So if the tempering temperature is going above 400 and above to say 700 to 800 range, that is our temp, because we can go up to only lower critical temperatures. So then impact strength obviously increases. Similarly for the ductility also, you see with higher temperature range this ductility is increasing, and with the red arrow you can see the BHN, the Brinell hardness number, it is going down. So like I discussed earlier, ductility and toughness increase and hardness goes down. So the tempering temperature is so chosen that it results in the desired combination of the properties, like I discussed with you with the earlier graph, how properties can change and how we get different impact values, strength and our ductility. So from there this graph you can choose the tempering temperature and according to your requirement. Some steel show drop in impact values in the certain tempering temperature range also. So this drop is an indication of what? Brittleness, because toughness will decrease and brittleness will come in, and this range should be avoided. For mild steel, this brittleness, which is also known as blue brittleness, occurs at a tempering temperature of about 300 degrees centigrade. So for mild steel we will have to avoid this temperature of 300 degrees centigrade. So now we discuss some special treatments after discussing the tempering process and why this special treatment is needed. The purpose is to avoid any types of cracking. That's why we give these types of treatments. So where these are applied, the place of application, in case of large sections where water quenching will most likely produce cracks, and therefore we will do a special treatment. And why these cracks appear actually? Because skin cools faster and changes into martensite, while the inner core cools slowly and transforms later, so dilation occurs. So this dilation causes outer skin to crack. Thus, now we discuss the isothermal transformation, which comes under the special treatments only. So austenite is not usually converted into martensite instantaneously, but the process will take certain time. Different steels take different time for full transformation, like we discussed in our time transformation diagram earlier, that there is a certain time gap in which the transformation takes place. So this time depends upon the temperatures from where cooling begins. The selected specimen is again austenized and then quenched in liquid bath, held at a certain temperature to be investigated. This specimen is held for different length of time, like I have discussed earlier, that both temperature and length of time are very important. Thus the resulting structure then can be studied under microscope to get the hardness and any other associated property. It is seen that definite times are required for the initiation and completion of the transformation, and these times vary with temperature. So if you can recall from the time transformation diagram, at different temperatures the time taken for transformation were different. So the same thing is given here. Here is the TTT diagram, if you can see, and it gives the complete transformation of eutectoid steel. So we are discussing about eutectoid, that is 0.8% carbon steel. So as the transformation temperature is lowered from say A1 temperature, that was 723 to 738 degree, to about 550 degree centigrade, what will happen? Nucleation and completion time decreases. So perlite and lamellae become finer. From about 550 to 250 degree centigrade, the nucleation and completion time increase. That means grain growth will now take place. So the perlite will get coarse. The transformation product here is termed as bainite. It's a new term now. Instead of perlite, we call it bainite, which is composed of two equilibrium phases. That is what? Ferrite and cementite. And the time of minimum nucleation is identified as the nose or knee. So this you have learnt in the time transformation diagram earlier also. The nose there is because the transformation time is lesser at that point. So that's why nose is formed. Below about 250 degrees centigrade, the transformation product is martensite. As we know, if the quenching is done or the cooling rate is very high, then martensite is formed, and we reach the 250 degrees centigrade range. This is happening almost instantaneously, but the amount formed depends upon the temperature. So there are upper and lower limits of martensite transformation also, because the temperature at which has it started and the temperature at which it ends will govern this thing. So the first one, starting one, is known as the MS, martensite formation start, and then MF represents the martensite finish temperature. So from this diagram we can see how different processes of special treatments give us different things. Like we discussed the Aus tempering and the Mart tempering. So we can see from this diagram what are the things that are formed. Microstructure changes. So in the range of 250 degrees centigrade, you can see from the figure that there is martensite basically, and there may be a mixture of bainite or martensite as well, depending on the process. Like if it is Aus tempering, then bainite will also be there. If it is Mart tempering, then only martensite will be there. So further moving up, if we see the range of 300 to 500 degrees centigrade, we can see lower bainite, upper bainite, and fine perlite also. So fine perlite means that nucleation has taken place in a right manner and grain growth is lesser. And further upper region, you see 700 degrees centigrade, around 600 to 700. So there we see a mixture of austenite plus perlite, or there may be only post perlite also, depending upon the temperature. And from this curve again we can see, like you have studied earlier in the TTT diagram, there is the nose. So nose represents the fastest transformation. You can see the lines. There is the start transformation line as well as the finish transformation, and the 50% transformation line, meaning the 50% martensite or perlite is being formed. So this gives us the information about the different microstructures that are formed due to different special treatments. So further we move on and discuss new special treatment, I think, that is OS-tempering. What is done in OS-tempering? If you see from this TTT diagram, where time is on the log scale and that temperature is on the y-axis. So first the component is austenized, like earlier also we have seen. First of all, austenizing take place in tempering also, and then it is quenched in a lead or salt bath just above the martensite transformation temperature. So this quenching is done up to the level at a temperature where it is just above the martensite transformation temperature starting. So component is then held in the bath until the bayanite transformation is completed, and then it is removed from the bath and cooled in air to room temperature. So here we are doing the bayanite production. So the cooling is done in air till room temperature is reached. So this is about OS-tempering. As we have discussed, that bayanite is produced and it is little softer than martensite of same carbon content. That's why we are doing this OS-tempering, and there is minimum distortion. Also, the OS-tempered steel has improved shock resistance and low notch sensitivity. So if we are doing OS-tempering, then we are getting better shock performance. That means it is more shock resistance. Impact resistance also increases, low notch sensitivity. Then further we discuss the other process, that is Marr tempering. After OS-tempering, there is one more process, that is Marr tempering. So what is the difference between the two? We will know after discussing this. So the process is like the piece or the specimen is hardened and is fully austenized, like the earlier case in case of OS-tempering also. So this is similar, and then it is quenched into a lead of salt bath, which is held at a temperature just above at which martensite would begin to form. So up till this point, all things are similar to OS-tempering. It is kept at this temperature until its temperature becomes uniform throughout. So we keep it at this temperature for a certain time, so that every portion of that specimen has a uniform temperature. Whether outside or inside, both have uniform temperature. Then it is water quenched to form complete martensite, such that bayanite formation is prevented. So this is the difference now. Here water quenching is taking place, and here that's why no bayanite forms and only martensite forms. So here is the diagram also where the difference is there. If you will compare it with the earlier curve, you can see that at the TTT diagram, if you see, for a certain time it is parallel after the austenizing process to the x-axis, and then it suddenly moves down. If you see that line, it suddenly moves down below the martensite start temperature, and that's why complete martensite is formed. Whereas in the case of the earlier curve where bayanite was being formed, so that constant line or the parallel line to the x-axis will remain as such, and it will not go into the martensite zone. So this process successfully separates the cooling contraction from the austenite martensite expansions, and thus prevents quench cracking in large articles. So this is the benefit of this process. So in this session we took over the things like hardenability, how it is measured. We discussed that thing in this session, and further we discussed about different special treatments like the isothermal transformations and the Marr tempering and the OS-tempering. So this was covered in this session, and further things like surface hardening and all we will discuss in the next session. Thank you very much.